Hello, everyone. You are listening to another episode of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. I'm your host, Janine Wolf, and today I'm joined by Michael Chiapone, LCSW. I hope I said that right. Michael is a seasoned social worker, educator, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in mental health and substance use treatment. As a CEO and founder of CHI Professional Development, he creates and delivers CE courses for social workers and other mental health professionals, as well as community advocates, focusing on practical skills and real-world applications. So, what we're going to start off with today is talking about addiction and recovery, understanding the journey through music and film, but based on the breadth of knowledge and experience that Michael has, I feel pretty certain that we're going to veer off into some other things as well. So, thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thanks for having me. And certainly thank you for the work you're doing, especially now where people can feel very isolated. It's wonderful to have those voices as at least some kind of connection amongst our colleagues. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a passion project for me. It really came from having the Collab Oasis consultation group membership that I have and hearing the same things over and over and the insecurities and things like that and
Sure.
realizing that apparently we need more voices out there with some of this stuff.
It's remarkable too, the idea of having that idea and then being able to translate it to something when there's so many roadblocks and so often are internal roadblocks to stop us from moving forward. But certainly the work you're doing is proving fruitful. So thanks again.
Absolutely. All right. So, Michael, can you start by telling us about this unique approach to addiction and recovery using music?
Sure. So I've been working with people with substance use disorder for most of my professional career. Certainly, as I think many of us realize, no matter what client system we might be working with, there's going to be somebody with substance use disorder, whether it's in their families, in their workplace. So when I think about the years of treatment and really my mentors that have worked with people with substance use disorder, it really needs to be an approach where it's just not a one size fits all type approach. It can't just be don't drink and go to meetings, which is not a treatment modality, but it's certainly effective for some, but we need to move beyond that. And working in the medical field and treatment field, there is still such a stigma attached to, or at least how we speak about people who have this disorder. I thought a course like this could be helpful to address how we can maybe reduce some of that stigma and hopefully understand a little bit more where that person might be coming from.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you tell us what that looks like in a session?
So the course itself it's made up really to help the clinician kind of listen differently. So the way the course is laid out is that it's an interactive course. So I'll put that out right away where I will show different film clips, I'll show different songs, or I'll play different songs and we'll discuss in small groups, get back to a bigger group. What is this? If this person was your patient, what are they trying to say? Where are they in the stages of change? Where are they in a cycle of addiction? And to kind of try to tease out those things in hearing some of these pop culture or songs that we all know. So then the goal is, especially in the group process in the class, by being able to identify those things that we can then move forward and approach that person in a more welcoming manner instead of a look at them, they're doing it again, or why can't they stop? To kind of try to create more better understanding with more empathy about where this person might be coming from.
Yeah, and so many societal misconceptions and judgments around a lot of things that we experience in our work, but especially addiction and recovery.
Sure.
Um,
Especially even over the past 5 years, right? 10 years. So for somebody in there that's practicing in their even their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, the pot that kids used to smoke in high school is different today. What's in it could potentially be different. The cycle of or building tolerance, it's much different today with the use of fentanyl. It just happens, right? So it's different in so many ways from a healthcare point of view, from a societal point of view, where it's no longer what it used to be. So that adds to that stigma.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great training method. It's more concrete for people to look deeper and to see where their perspective is coming from and how they can be more sensitive, empathetic, as you said. But I also imagine that it's good for those therapists. Do they then in turn begin to use that type of media in their work with clients?
So I certainly have in different ways, even if it's something where the therapist can be like, I heard this, and this is what I make of this. What do you think of this? And for a lot of the people that sit before us, whether they're here for substance uses or something else, this idea of only talk therapy, it doesn't really work for everybody. In a group setting, if somebody is quiet, it doesn't mean that they're not taking it in. It just means that they're more private. They might be introvert. So any avenue that can create some type of dialogue that's, in a safe, I think needs to be tried. As long as it's within the confines of ethical practice. And it's being inquisitive, right? As a social worker, I want to understand where you're coming from. I heard this in a training, and this is what I took from it. Is this something that's accurate? Or so it kind of hopefully creates a little different type of experience for the person.
And much like my obviously, I love analogies. Much like
Sure.
that, you're framing it in a different way, which can sometimes open up a whole different perspective or a deeper understanding.
Yeah, and it removes the some of the media we use. It's not people just all rosy and living in recovery. It's people who are in pain. It's people who are having a difficult time. And we're not saying when we're playing it, oh, this person is not doing well, or this person needs to do X, Y, and Z, or they're going to be removed from treatment. It's, hey, I'm listening to this person. I want to hear this person. And just even just taking that approach outside of the media piece, it certainly is a harm reduction approach. It's a person centered approach. What we were doing for so long, it worked for some, but not for everybody. And we see that with the amount of overdose is and the amount of people who are incarcerated due to any type of substance use disorder.
Yeah, I think that we are seeing so many modalities now that are highly effective. And as you said,
Sure.
it speaks to people's lived experiences in life and their identity and so many aspects about them. I love having people on here to discuss some of these other modalities and effective ways to work with clients. And I just hope that as a field, we're sometimes kind of judgy about that stuff. And so
Right.
as a field, I feel like we're making some inroads with being more open and accepting. Is that something you get challenged about or no?
Yes, and it's to nobody's fault, especially in the substance use disorder field. People are certainly overworked. They do their job passionately, but we're always up against it. So this idea of any type of prevention, it's very kind of difficult. We're looking at people who are really struggling, who need help, and we know that there's more people out there. It's easier in some ways and say, well, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be discharged from treatment. However, signs and evidence is showing that the longer that they're in treatment, especially with medicated assisted treatment, the longer, the better chance there is to risk any type of harm. So yes, there's pushback, but I have been really fortunate to be around again people who have mentored me, as well as people who are at least open to that conversation, and that not may, and some people aren't. Some my very first experience with any type of harm reduction, I was doing a home people who are chronically homeless outreach. And where I lived, there was like a main road and there was a light. And basically, if you were stopped at that light, you saw everything going on. It was a very congested area. And there was somebody who had been drinking on the side of the road right by the light. I was doing some outreach and he complained to me. He said, I've always getting appearance tickets because I'm drinking in public. So traditionally, I think most people would say, well, let's get you into a detox, right? Or let's get you into rehab, which it comes from a place of caring. His statement, his treatment goal, if you will, was I'm getting appearance tickets. I want them to stop. My response to him was, well, why don't you just drink behind the building so nobody sees you? And I tell you, the look on his face was like, yeah, that's a different, not that I, but that was a different response and one that allowed me to have like more conversations with him.
Yeah, and the other approach about getting them into treatment is you're jumping way ahead
Sure.
on this person's needs and desires and readiness for that. Those types of approaches are so important with just in our group sometimes we'll have a newer clinician say to a more seasoned clinician. So I'm wondering as you're struggling with this case if you think you spent enough time building rapport. And so sometimes we have to remember those basics and like really be conscious of them. And a lot of what we do becomes intuitive, but we do still have aspects of what we're doing with clients that we need to
Sure.
be
Yeah.
mindful of.
And it depends on the setting we're in. So for some clients, patients have seen multiple counselors come through a very broken healthcare system. And so we need to acknowledge that too. Right away, this person thinks I'm going to be leaving. And it's the nature of some agencies, some places where we work. And I agree, the rapport building starts from the moment they call for empathy. So clearly, very important. Yeah.
So, do you see that? So, the therapist that might be taking your course,
Sure.
I would imagine the depth of what they are getting as far as recognizing guilt, shame, some of those other things that maybe are not so much highlighted in the way they're viewing addiction and recovery. So, do you feel like the media really helps broaden their perspective around that?
I hope so. I've gotten really good feedback. I don't look at teaching or providing continuing education hours as like a check in the box. I don't. People's times are valuable. The people we work with, they're valuable. Most people are empathetic. Most people want to help, right, in this field. If they don't learn it for the first time, depending how long they've been in this field, they're reminded of exactly what you said, the shame. I think it's mostly shame attached to people's use. My anecdotal reflection of this is that everyone's looking for connection, everyone to be a part of something. That coupled with these substances that hijack the brain and the human body, the people that walk into where my full-time job, the clinic I'm a supervisor at, they're walking in with so much trauma and so much shame that we need to really understand that. And it's difficult at times because we're human beings. So at very least, have this course helps people remember that and to give tools for how to kind of realize that in ourselves, our own implicit bias, and how to overcome that.
And as you were talking about connection, which is so important. So I was reading an email by Megan Neff, who works a lot with neurodivergent clients as neurodivergent herself and has a podcast around neurodivergency. And the email was basically saying she was looking at connection, and we look for signs of connection, but actually the default for our brain connection is there. So we don't need to prove that we need that connection or that we're getting that connection. We need to let it happen and your brain's going to be happier.
Yeah. If you want to personify addiction, you hear, this disease wants me dead. That's common. I believe the disease wants the person alone. That's where the field day is, that isolation. So, right, any type of connection, any type of feeling a part of is the beginning of something. And I say this very kind of tongue in cheek. People who just have any type of addiction, those are people that I see have moved on and lived incredible, meaningful, purposeful lives the easiest. I've certainly worked with all types of, who have overcome so many different things. But again, with the state of the different services that are out there that are just so fragmented, people need support and people need to be heard and listened to. And I feel always very fortunate when that person walks in that I'm able to help.
Yeah. And so, because of all of those factors and the way programs are set up, building trust has to take a long time, I would imagine, with those clients.
It's interesting too. There's, yes, certainly the authenticity of the clinician helps. And then I hope that people that are listening have all had those experiences with that patient who we see that light or we see that moment of clarity, whether it's around addiction or anything. I want change. We as clinicians, we help grow that, plant it and fertilize it and help grow it. But we need to be there for us to help that experience. So absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, beyond your clinical work, you are engaged in policy discussions affecting social justice, which I love.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us some about that?
6 years ago now, I started Chi Professional Development. And the logo is a tree growing out of a book. And this idea of where there's knowledge, there's growth. I mean, I kind of just love that imagery. The business came about because I love learning. The work we do is difficult. I almost need to be in that academic bubble sometimes. I like being around my colleagues. And, I taught at a local university, School of Social Welfare at Stony Brook in New York. And that kind of the freshness of that academic class I love. So I was just teaching classes myself, and then people started reaching out to me to teach classes. I feel very grateful to those folks. The business has grown because of them, provide such wonderful courses. I teach what I know, what I feel like I can really teach with the surety and with the evidence-based practice and my research and experience. Other folks have come on, which has been great. It's a time where many of the institutions that we've known have been challenged by this current administration. And many of the executive orders or policies, in reading them, they are affecting what I look at as one of our social work values is integrity and really protecting the person and advocacy. So I started a course called Work to Fix Policies That Threaten Social Justice. And the acronym, only because of the space limit, it's WTF policies.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, I'm not sure if that means what I think it
It means
means.
work to fix policies that affect. So that's right. So Hey, as a social worker, I'm not going to tell you what to think. You can think whatever you want about it, right? But in a real way, this isn't in my heart, it's not political. In my heart, it's really, we need to really pay attention to what's happening. We need to have knowledge about it. It's part of our ethical responsibility. If it's going to affect the patients or communities we work with, we definitely need to know about it. And if there's kind of a macro piece to it, and this isn't just tied to this administration, some of the stuff that we're looking at is tied from the last administration. So this is really about helping social workers become educated and all mental health professionals become educated on what's happening in the here and now. It's going to affect them, if it's going to affect their patients. And if it doesn't align with our professional code, what can we do to change it? Right. We've had classes. There's been some voices in there that, and I don't start a class thinking that everybody agrees with how I think. That's dangerous. That's dangerous territory. And I really don't other anybody. I don't think, well, they voted for them. But we also need to challenge that are rooted in injustice. So it's a course that we've been running either every 1 week or every 2 weeks, and it's very fluid. Yesterday, we did a topic on the Department of Education. It just so happened on NPR yesterday, an article came out about it. So it's front and center. It's looking at what has been said, the policies, if they go through, how is it going to affect schools and communities, and what as mental health professionals should we be looking at, and how can we affect positive change. And it's also a course that invites the community in as well. So we're creating this environment of connection and this idea of like, let's not put people in a box. So people hear that I'm against a certain policy. At least the social media response is, well, you like government fraud, you want to let people over the border, you don't care. Like, no, but most of us live in the gray. So it's really trying to find that area where we can have real discussions with people. And it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm running it with she's an attorney and a lawyer, but she does a lot of work, ethics, Dr. Catherine Crace. So we're tag teaming it. We're working together, co-facilitating, and then we're bringing in a guest speaker that's an expert in that field. It's been a wonderful experience that I have no energy for, but it's important. So
Yeah, and as you were talking before you said that it's somewhat fluid, I'm thinking like multiple things are happening every single day. And in the past, we might have something happen in our country or our world where we might have an idea that, a couple of my clients are probably going to be impacted with this. So I
sure.
have to make space for that. But now I'll see a client this week and next week, they're dealing with a whole different level of impacts on their life. And so I do want to normalize that for people who are listening. I'm big
Sure.
into normalizing stuff in our field that we don't have to know all the answers. We don't have to be
Sure.
on top of everything, but we need to do the work with our clients the way we were trained to, being open, curious, supportive, all those things that we were taught. But a lot of them are feeling like they have to be on top of everything, all the changes.
Sure.
And I don't think it's possible with the quickness of a lot of the changes we're seeing.
Sure. I also find it's hard to get through the nonsense of it all. So something could be posted 1,000 times in Facebook and it's just not true. It's simply not true. At least as clinicians, like if we give out the tools to at least find that information, what is true or not. Like right now, a big thing is it's Medicaid and what happened with Medicaid. For me, it's being able to educate our communities, patients, other clinicians of this is what's happening and this is where it is right now. And so to try to at least kind of mitigate some of that anxiety of things that haven't happened yet. And it's difficult. Another piece of it all is we need to take care of ourselves. We can't do it all. I taught a class on crisis intervention at Stony Brook a few years ago. And I was grateful at the end, they talked about self-care, this thick book. There was like a tiny little chapter on self-care at the end. I went to my supervisor, director of the program, and they allowed me to create a course in self-care for social workers. And that should be a prerequisite to
Yeah.
so many things that we do. So it's so easy to get overwhelmed. But as you know, that connection piece is so important with other professionals to be like, all right, this is what I can do today. This is how I can move forward today.
We put so much pressure on ourselves as therapists. We set the bar so high.
Yeah.
So, this is permission for people to lower the bar some. Like, you might have days, especially now, when you don't feel like you're doing your best work. You're probably doing great work with
Right.
what you have, the information and the skills and everything. But we do put a lot on ourselves.
We do. And some people, I'm sure, struggle with this as I do. Talk a lot about self care. Do we practice it? And I love the definition of self care. It's something we do intentionally. We all have 5 minutes,
Mhm.
and there's so much to deep breathing physically helps slow us down and heal us, and we get what we need. And we all have that. What do you think a big obstacle is to self care? Let me ask you, like,
Taking the time and being mindful about it, I would imagine.
yeah, I think some of us, like you said, we're so hard on ourselves, we don't think we're worth it. And of course you are. Of course we are. Like there's only one of you, there's only one of me. You're sharing your gifts and that I'm sharing my gifts. I hope that it's helping people. And so many people have so many wonderful gifts that we need to really celebrate.
Yeah. Okay. So before we start wrapping up, Michael, instead of an analogy, has a philosophy he would like to share. So go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so it's this idea of we work with so many different people in so many different aspects of the human condition, and being someone who likes to fix things in terms of around my home, not just with people. It's so important for us to have or to know the tool that we need to use. And we're not going to be experts in all the tools, but at least if we know, not to use to be silly, not to use a hammer to change a light bulb, we know that we need to find somebody that is skilled in that if we don't have that real skill set. So it's really learning what tools you have. If you find that tool that you feel very comfortable with, learn it more, and really, that's how we can affect the best change in the people and the systems that we work with.
Yeah, that sums up so much. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I appreciate you coming on with me today, Michael. I'm going to put the links that you shared with me in the show notes so people can connect with you and find out more about what you do. And for all of you hardworking therapists out there, please remember our work is hard, but it doesn't have to be lonely.
Cool.